The envelope was marked confidential, to be opened only upon death. Robert Wolders had been dreading this moment for weeks. 3 months after Audrey Hepburn's funeral, he finally sat in the Geneva office of her longtime attorney, Hans Müller, surrounded by filing cabinets that contained 30 years of carefully guarded secrets. January 20th, 1993. The world was still mourning the loss of Audrey Hepburn, Hollywood's beloved icon, who had died of appendiceal cancer at age 63. The obituaries had celebrated her films, her style, her UNICEF work, but none of them had told the real story of how Audrey Hepburn had spent the last 3 decades of her life. Because nobody knew. "Mr. Wolders," Mueller said quietly, "what I'm about to show you will change everything you thought you knew about Audrey. She made me promise to keep these records sealed until after her death. She said the world should remember her for her films and her public charity work, not for this." Mueller opened the first file. Inside were bank statements, transfer records, and correspondence dating back to 1956. Page after page of financial documents, all bearing Audrey's signature, all authorizing enormous sums of money to be transferred to accounts around the world. But these weren't payments for films or investments or luxury purchases. They were donations. Hundreds of them. Some for thousands of dollars, some for hundreds of thousands. Anonymous gifts to organizations, individuals, and causes that Audrey had somehow discovered needed help. "She started in 1956, Mueller explained, right after Roman holiday made her wealthy. She came to me and said she wanted to give away most of her money, but she wanted it done in complete secrecy. No publicity, no tax deductions, no recognition of any kind." Wolders stared at the documents in disbelief. "How much are we talking about?" Mueller consulted his summary sheet. Over 37 years, Miss Hepburn donated approximately $18.6 million. In today's money, that would be equivalent to nearly $50 million. 18 million? Wolders felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. "She gave away $18 million without telling anyone?" "Actually," Mueller said quietly, "that figure doesn't include the properties." He opened another file. Inside were deeds, purchase agreements, and property transfers for buildings around the world. A former warehouse in London that had been converted into a shelter for homeless women. A burned-out school in Kenya that had been rebuilt and expanded. An abandoned orphanage in Bangladesh that had been restored and staffed. She bought properties in her own name, then immediately transferred ownership to local charitable organizations, Mueller explained, always anonymously. The recipients never knew where the money came from. Wolders picked up one of the documents at random. It was a property transfer for a building in Calcutta, India, purchased by Audrey Hepburn for $340,000 in 1978, immediately donated to the Missionaries of Charity to be used as a clinic for dying children. "Mother Teresa's clinic," Wolders whispered, recognizing the address. Audrey funded Mother Teresa's clinic? One of them. She funded 7 different facilities for the Missionaries of Charity over the years. Mother Teresa never knew where the money came from. She thought it came from an anonymous Catholic benefactor. Mueller pulled out another stack of files. But the properties were just the beginning. The real scope of her giving was in individual cases. Children who needed surgery, families facing eviction, students who couldn't afford education. Somehow she found them. Wolders opened one of the individual case files. Inside was a letter from a woman in Tennessee written in 1967. "Dear Miss Hepburn, I hope this letter finds you. I wanted to thank you for the mysterious donation that paid for my daughter's heart surgery. The hospital said an anonymous donor had covered all our bills. I don't know how you found out about Sarah or why you helped us, but because of your kindness, my little girl is alive today." The letter was signed by Rebecca Martinez, and attached to it was a photo of a smiling 7-year-old girl holding a stuffed animal. "How did Audrey even know about this case?" Wolders asked. "She read everything," Mueller said. "Local newspapers, medical journals, letters from aid organizations. She had a network of contacts, doctors, teachers, social workers who would quietly inform her about cases where a small amount of money could change someone's life completely." He opened another file. "This is from 1972. A family in Vietnam whose father was killed in the war. The mother was trying to bring her 3 children to America but couldn't afford the immigration fees. Audrey paid for the entire process, including transportation and housing for the first year. The file contained photos of the family arriving at Los Angeles airport, letters from the children as they grew up, graduation announcements, wedding invitations. Audrey had been following their lives for 20 years, never revealing her identity. She kept track of everyone she helped, Mueller continued. Thousands of people. She knew when they got married, when their children were born, when they graduated from school. She celebrated their successes and worried about their problems. They were all part of her extended family, though most of them never knew she existed." Wolders found another letter, this one from a young man in Ethiopia. To the anonymous donor who paid for my education at Oxford University. I graduated today with highest honors in medicine. I am returning to my village to open a clinic that will serve 50,000 people. I don't know who you are, but you didn't just change my life. You changed my entire community's future. Dr. Haile Gebrselassie, Mueller noted. He's now one of the leading physicians in East Africa. Audrey funded his education from age 12 through medical school. 18 years of support. He never knew her name. The scope of Audrey's secret giving was staggering. She had funded schools in 16 countries, paid for medical treatments for hundreds of children, provided scholarships for thousands of students, and supported countless families through financial crises. But it wasn't just the money that impressed Wolders, it was the personal attention Audrey had paid to each case. Look at this, Mueller said, opening a file marked, Jenny Morrison, polio patient, Birmingham, England. Inside were letters spanning 12 years from 1961 to 1973. The first was from a hospital social worker explaining that a 10-year-old girl named Jenny had contracted polio and would need extensive physical therapy that her family couldn't afford. Audrey's response was immediate, payment for all medical expenses and a handwritten note. Please tell Jenny that someone is thinking of her and wishes her strength during her recovery. But then came something unexpected. More letters from Jenny herself sent through the hospital, letters about her progress, her fears, her dreams of walking again, and responses from a friend, clearly written in Audrey's handwriting, offering encouragement, advice, and emotional support. The correspondence continued for 12 years. Jenny's first steps with braces, her return to school, her graduation, her wedding, her first child. Each milestone celebrated by a mysterious friend who sent gifts and letters but never revealed her identity. The final letter in the file was from Jenny, now in her 30s. Dear friend, I know you may never see this, but I wanted to write one more time. Today my daughter took her first steps. As I watched her walk toward me, I thought about all the years you supported me, all the letters you wrote, all the encouragement you gave. You saved my life. But more than that, you taught me that kindness doesn't require recognition. When my daughter is old enough, I'll teach her to help others the way you helped me. Your mystery friend will remain a mystery, but your kindness will live on forever. Wolders had to set the file down. His hands were shaking. How many people? He asked quietly. How many individual cases? Mueller consulted his records. Over the years, Miss Hepburn provided direct financial assistance to approximately 4,847 individuals and families. She corresponded personally with 1,132 of them. Some relationships lasted decades. And none of them knew it was her? She insisted on complete anonymity. She used a network of intermediaries, social workers, doctors, lawyers like myself, to distribute the money and handle communications. She called herself a friend or anonymous donor. The only exception was when she met people through her UNICEF work, but even then she would often provide additional private assistance that they never connected to their public encounters with her. Mueller opened another file. This might be the most remarkable case. Do you remember when Audrey visited the Ethiopian famine victims in 1988? Wolders nodded. It had been one of her most publicized UNICEF missions. She met a boy there named DeWitt, 7 years old, severely malnourished, parents dead. The cameras captured her holding him, and the photo became famous. But what the cameras didn't capture was what happened next. Inside the file was documentation of extraordinary commitment. Audrey had arranged for DeWitt to be brought to a specialized nutrition center, then to a hospital in London, then to a family in Switzerland who could care for him while he recovered. She had paid for his medical treatment, his education, and his living expenses. She essentially adopted him, Mueller continued, but did it so quietly that even DeWitt didn't fully understand the extent of her involvement. As far as he knew, he was being helped by a Swiss charity organization. There were photos of DeWitt growing up, school pictures, sports teams, graduation ceremonies. In the later photos, he was a healthy, smiling young man studying engineering at the University of Geneva. He knows about Audrey now? Wolders asked. Not yet. According to her instructions, I'm supposed to contact all the people she helped and inform them of her identity after her death. But only if they want to know. Some people prefer to remember their anonymous benefactor as a mystery. Mueller pulled out one final file, thicker than all the others. But this was her greatest project, the thing she was most proud of. Inside were architectural plans, construction documents, and thousands of photographs spanning 25 years. The plans showed a complex of buildings, dormitories, classrooms, medical facilities, workshops. The Sunshine Village, Mueller said, a residential school and vocational training center for disabled children in Kenya. Audrey built it from nothing, starting in 1967. She purchased 200 acres of land outside Nairobi, hired architects, supervised construction, recruited staff, and funded operations. The photographs showed the progression from empty land to a thriving community. Children in wheelchairs learning computer skills, blind students reading Braille, kids with prosthetic limbs playing soccer, teachers working with students who had cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, and other disabilities. At any given time, the village serves about 300 children, Muller explained. Over the years, more than 2,000 disabled children have received education and training there. Most of them go on to productive careers. Many become teachers or social workers themselves. Wolders studied the photographs. Happy children, dedicated teachers, modern facilities. It looked like a small university campus. The local community thinks it's funded by the Kenyan government and international aid organizations, Muller continued. They have no idea that one woman from Hollywood paid for the entire thing. How much did this cost her? Including land purchase, construction, equipment, and 25 years of operating expenses, approximately $4.7 million. Wolders sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what he was learning. Audrey Hepburn, the woman he'd lived with for the last 12 years of her life, had been secretly operating one of the largest private charitable programs in the world. But how? He asked finally. How did she manage all this without anyone knowing? How did she research the cases, coordinate the donations, maintain relationships with thousands of people? Muller smiled. She worked harder at charity than most people work at their careers. She had a private office in Geneva that she used under an assumed name. She employed a staff of 8 people whose only job was to research worthy causes and manage her giving. She spent at least 4 hours every day reading letters, reviewing cases, and making decisions about where money should go. I never saw any of this. We lived together for 12 years. She compartmentalized her life completely. Her charity work was done here in Geneva when she told you she was handling business matters. The office is 3 blocks from here. Would you like to see it? An hour later, they stood in a modest office building, looking at a suite of rooms that had been Audrey's secret headquarters for 3 decades. The main room contained filing cabinets that reached the ceiling, filled with thousands of individual case files. Maps covered the walls, marked with pins indicating projects around the world. Desks were covered with letters, photographs, and reports from various charitable organizations. It looked like the mission control center for a global humanitarian operation. She came here every Tuesday and Thursday when she was in town, Muller explained. Sometimes she'd stay for 8 or 10 hours reading letters and making decisions. She personally reviewed every request for assistance. Wolders picked up a letter from one of the desks. It was from a teacher in Bangladesh, asking for help repairing a school roof damaged by monsoons. In the margin, Audrey had written, $3,000 approved, in her distinctive handwriting. Another letter was from a mother in Brazil whose son needed eye surgery. Surgery plus travel plus recovery, $8,500 approved. A request from a village in India for clean water equipment, $12,000 approved. One after another, hundreds of requests, each personally reviewed and most approved for funding. She must have given away almost everything she earned, Wolders said. Actually, she did, Muller replied. In her final years, she was living primarily on the income from her Swiss investments and the money you provided from your own career. Almost every dollar she earned from films or endorsements went directly to charity. But she never seemed to worry about money. She lived comfortably. She had enough for her personal needs, but just enough. The house in Switzerland, travel expenses, basic living costs. Everything else went to other people. As they drove back to Muller's office, Wolders tried to reconcile the woman he'd known with the information he'd just discovered. Audrey had been private about many things, but he'd never suspected anything like this. Why? He asked finally. Why such secrecy? Why not get credit for this incredible generosity? Muller thought for a moment. She told me once that charity becomes less pure when it's public. She said that helping people in secret meant she was helping them for the right reasons, not for recognition or tax benefits or public relations. But surely she could have raised more money for these causes by going public. Her celebrity could have brought attention to these needs. That's exactly what she did through UNICEF. But she believed there was value in both kinds of charity, public advocacy to raise awareness, and the private giving to actually solve problems. She thought the private giving was more important because it was more direct and more honest. Back in the office, Muller showed Wolders one final document. It was a letter Audrey had written to be read after her death. If you are reading this, then I am gone, and the secret I have kept for 37 years is finally being revealed. I hope you will understand why I chose to keep my charitable work private. I learned during the war that there is a difference between helping people because others are watching and helping people because they need help. The first kind of charity makes the giver feel good. The second kind actually changes lives. I was blessed with fame and fortune that I did nothing to deserve. I was born with certain advantages, discovered by Hollywood through luck, and given opportunities that millions of more talented people never received. It seemed wrong to keep those blessings when I could share them with people who needed them more than I did. The money I gave away was never really mine. It belonged to the children who needed surgery, the students who needed education, the families who needed homes. I was just the conduit that moved it from where it was to where it needed to be. If you were one of the people I was able to help, please know that helping you was the greatest privilege of my life. You gave me purpose and meaning beyond anything I achieved in films or public life. And if you choose to honor my memory, please do it not by remembering what I gave, but by finding your own ways to help others. The world has enough celebrities. It needs more kindness. With love and gratitude for allowing me to be part of your story. Audrey Hepburn. When Mueller finished reading, they sat in silence for several minutes. What happens now? Wolders asked eventually. To all these people she helped? To the projects she funded? She established a foundation with enough money to continue supporting the major projects for at least another decade. The Sunshine Village in Kenya, the medical facilities, the ongoing scholarships, they'll all continue. As for the individuals, many of them have built successful lives because of her help. They don't need ongoing assistance. And you'll contact all of them? Tell them who their anonymous benefactor was? Only if they want to know. She left that choice to them. Over the following months, Mueller began the delicate process of reaching out to the thousands of people Audrey had helped over the years. The reactions were overwhelming. Some chose to remain anonymous themselves, preferring to remember their mysterious benefactor as an unknown angel. But many wanted to share their stories. And as word spread, the true scope of Audrey Hepburn's secret life began to emerge. Dr. Haile Gebrselassie, the Ethiopian physician, learned that his anonymous donor had been Audrey Hepburn. His response? She was my mother, father, and guardian. Angel all at once. She made me a doctor, but more importantly, she taught me that helping others is the highest calling a human being can have. Jenny Morrison, the polio survivor from England, discovered that her mysterious pen pal had been Hollywood royalty. I always wondered why my friend's letters sounded so wise and thoughtful. Now I understand. Audrey Hepburn spent 12 years of her life caring about a little girl she never met. That's not celebrity. That's sainthood. The story of Audrey's secret charity work became global news, but it was different from typical celebrity coverage. There were no scandals or controversies, just story after story of quiet generosity and profound impact. The mayor of a small town in Mexico revealed that an anonymous donor had rebuilt their school after an earthquake in 1985. It had been Audrey. A shelter for homeless women in Detroit disclosed that their mysterious benefactor who had funded their operations for 15 years had been Audrey Hepburn. An organization providing prosthetic limbs to children in Cambodia announced that their largest donor, known only as a friend, had been Hollywood's most beloved actress. The revelations continued for months. Audrey Hepburn had touched thousands of lives across 6 continents, providing not just money, but personal attention, emotional support, and lasting commitment to people she'd never met but somehow learned to love. The final tally was staggering. $18.6 million donated, 4,147 individuals directly helped, 23 major facilities built or funded, 16 countries touched by her generosity, all done in complete secrecy with no expectation of recognition or reward. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery was a small notebook found in Audrey's personal effects. In it, she had written down the names of every person she'd helped, along with brief notes about their lives and updates on their progress. The final entry, written just weeks before her death, read, Dawit graduated engineering school today. Highest honors. He will build bridges in Africa. My work here is finished. At the bottom of the page, in Audrey's careful handwriting, the secret to happiness is giving. The secret to giving is secrecy. In the years since these revelations, Audrey Hepburn's reputation has transformed from beloved actress and humanitarian to something approaching secular sainthood. She is remembered not just as someone who helped people, but as someone who proved that true generosity requires no audience except the recipient. The Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund, established with her remaining assets, continues her work today, but it operates by her principles: quiet efficiency over public recognition, direct help over administrative overhead, individual attention over mass distribution. And every year on her birthday, thousands of people around the world who were touched by her secret kindness send donations to various charities with a simple note, from a friend. Because Audrey Hepburn taught them that the most powerful giving happens when nobody knows you're the one doing it.